the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Annual Policy Conference. U.S. Policy in the Middle East. Preventing the Erosion of Influence. September 19 to 21, 1986. Conference Report. Program. List of participants. The Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Conference Report. U.S. Policy in the Middle East. Preventing the Erosion of Influence. September 19 to 21, 1986. In its first policy conference, the Washington Institute brought together top-ranking policymakers, diplomats, scholars, and political leaders from America and abroad for a wide-ranging examination of the state of U.S. interests in the Middle East. Set on the grounds of the Aspen Institute at Y Plantation in Queenstown, Maryland, the conference enabled these foreign policy professionals and the Institute's Board of Trustees to come to grips with the issues confronting American policy. Friday night, September 19, 1986. Former Vice President Walter Mondale opened the conference with an address on the need for the intense personal involvement on the highest political level if the United States were to achieve success in the Middle East peace process. Mr. Mondale outlined several reasons for singling out the Middle East as a region in which standard diplomatic efforts would be insufficient to produce results in resolving the Arab-Israeli conflict. He called for a system of diplomatic engagement that incorporated special presidential envoys, as well as the active participation of the president himself at the appropriate moment in the peace process. Also, Mr. Mondale criticized the Reagan administration for failing to take advantage of an opening in the peace process during the past 2 years. His remarks provoked a lively exchange with several members of the Reagan administration concerning the proper function of professional diplomats in Mideast peacemaking and the appropriate timing for presidential involvement. They argued that the conditions were not yet right for such activism, because the parties to the conflict had not demonstrated sufficient willingness to enter negotiations. Saturday, September 20, 1986. Threats to peace, deterrence, and regional stability were the focus of both Saturday panels. In the morning, various components of Syrian political and military strategy were examined, particularly the possibility of an Israeli-Syrian confrontation. Later in the day, the conference analyzed the principal threats to domestic security of Arab states, with particular attention to the political implications of economic recession in the Middle East. Several important observations were made during the morning's panel regarding the Syrian threat to peace. First, there was general agreement that Syria's continual progress toward achieving strategic parity in preparation for war was systematically eroding Israel's deterrent. Second, participants reaffirmed the portrait of Hafez al-Assad as a pragmatic and cautious leader, but one ready to seize the first opportunity to go to war. Third, it was suggested that the possibility of war is in fact enhanced by the demographic composition of the Syrian regime, in that the ruling Alawite minority must rely much more than the Sunni Muslim majority on its anti-Israel credentials in its search for political legitimacy. Fourth, both superpowers appear to be caught between conflicting regional goals. On the one hand, the Soviet Union wants to avoid war, confrontation, and a humiliating defeat for East Bloc material, but it cannot afford the political tensions that would result from trying to reign in a regime that is a linchpin to Moscow's Mideast policies. On the other hand, the United States wants to prevent a war, but is unwilling to concede to Syria a veto over the peace process as the price for regional peace. Fifth, it was argued that all sides considered the status quo strategically tolerable, but that an Israel-Syrian war might introduce fluidity in the peace process by driving home the costs of continued conflict. Only in the immediate post-war period, then, would the peace process regain its urgency. Former Secretary of State Alexander Haig addressed the conference after lunch and offered a formula for Middle East peacemaking that contrasted with Mr. Mondale's. The premise of Mr. Haig's argument was that the United States should not engage the peace process with greater vigor than the parties themselves, and that the United States would in fact be squandering valuable diplomatic resources if it sought peace when the local parties were themselves ambivalent. On other issues, Mr. Haig warned of the dire consequences of an outright Iraqi military and political collapse, urged a stronger U.S. assertion of maritime rights in the Persian Gulf, and outlined stringent conditions for any Soviet participation in a Middle East peace conference. That afternoon, the conference looked at domestic threats to stability in Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. While it was argued that the immediate danger of fundamentalist Islam to regime stability may be on the wane, all participants agreed that economic recession and/or an Iranian breakthrough in the Gulf would boost the likelihood of fundamentalist-based domestic unrest. Most of the discussion concerned the security implications of the continuing deterioration of Arab economies, with particular reference to American strategic interests in Egypt. Sunday, September 21, 1986. After an entire day devoted to the darker side of Middle East politics, Sunday morning was reserved for an exploration of ways to expand the peace process. Representatives of the American, Israeli, and Egyptian governments were surprisingly uniform in their agreement on the need to bolster the Egyptian-Israeli bilateral relationship as the first step in any effort to expand the peace to other Arab partners. Also, there was surprisingly little debate regarding the proposed international conference, with few, if any, participants arguing that the international conference route holds the best chance for a comprehensive resolution of the regional conflict. Discussion revolved around several basic issues: whether to expect the next Sadat to come from Israel or from an Arab country, or whether to expect one at all; whether the existence of a status quo tolerable to too many actors in the region reduces the incentive for risk-taking toward peace; and whether enough is being done to cultivate the peace constituencies in Israel and the neighboring Arab states. A consensus did emerge among the conference participants that the next stage in the ongoing peace process would undoubtedly differ in both tone and substance from previous high-profile summit meetings, treaties, and territorial exchanges. Rather, peacemaking had become much more of an incremental process of movement towards a situation that would enable diplomacy to complete the task in the future. In that light, for example, emphasis had shifted away from overt diplomatic success to the more subtle Jordanian PLO battle for influence in the West Bank, with most participants agreeing that Jordan, Israel, and the Palestinians needed quiet encouragement in this process. Program: Friday, September 19th, 5 to 7 p.m. Arrival: 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Drinks: 7:30 to 9 p.m. Dinner. After dinner, we will adjourn to the conference room for an address by Walter Mondale, The U.S. and the Middle East, A Policymaker's Overview. 9:30 to 11 p.m. Informal discussion. Saturday, September 20th, 9 to 10:30 a.m. Session 1. The Threat of War. Dennis Ross, National Security Council, Soviet-Syrian Relations. Itamar Rabinovich, Dayan Center, Hafez El-Assad. Shai Feldman, Jaffe Center, Syria-Israel Military Balance. Harvey Sickerman, Washington Institute, U.S.-Syrian Relations. 10:30 to 11 a.m. Coffee break. 11 to 12:30 p.m. Small group discussion on the threat of war. 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. Lunch. After lunch, we will adjourn to the conference room for an address by Alexander Haig, U.S. Policy and the Middle East. The fourth option. 2:30 to 4 p.m. Session 2. Threats to Regime Stability. Daniel Pipes, Foreign Policy Research Institute, Islamic Fundamentalism. Howard Teicher, National Security Council, The Iranian Threat. Paul Jabber, Council on Foreign Relations, Egypt. Yossi Olmert, Dayan Center, Syria and Lebanon. Robert Satloff, Washington Institute, Jordan. Saturday, September 20th, continued. 4 to 5:30 p.m. Small group discussion on internal threats. 5:30 to 7 p.m. Break. 7 to 7:30 p.m. Drinks. 7:30 to 9 p.m. Dinner. 9 to 11 p.m. Informal discussion. Sunday, September 21st, 9:30 to 11 a.m. Session 3. Preventing War, Widening the Peace. Arnold Raffel, Near East Affairs, State Department. Hanan Baran, Israeli Foreign Ministry. Tassin Bashir, Counselor to the President, Egypt. Martin Indyk, Washington Institute. 11 to 11:15 a.m. Coffee break. 11:15 to 12:30 p.m. Concluding discussion, Samuel Lewis. 12:30 to 2 p.m. Lunch and final remarks. List of participants. Institute Advisory Board. Alexander Haig, Secretary of State, 1981 to 1982. Samuel Lewis, Diplomat in Residence, Johns Hopkins Foreign Policy Institute. Walter Mondale, Vice President, 1977 to 1981. Policymakers and experts. Hanan Baran, Deputy Director General, Israeli Foreign Ministry. Tahsin Bashir, Counselor to Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. Wendy Chamberlain, Deputy Director, Regional Affairs, NEA. Shai Feldman, Senior Fellow, Jaffe Center for Strategic Studies. Graham Fuller, Vice Chair, National Intelligence Committee, CIA. Martin Indyk, Executive Director, The Washington Institute. Yang Jiechi, Embassy of the People's Republic of China. Paul Jabber, Director, Middle East Program, Council on Foreign Relations. Elisa Joyce, MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour. Andrew Marshall, Director of Net Assessment, Department of Defense. Arnold Raffel, Senior Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, Near East Affairs. Joseph Olmert, Senior Researcher, Dayan Center for Middle East Studies. Daniel Pipes, Director, Foreign Policy Research Institute. Itamar Rabinovich, Director, Dayan Center for Middle East Studies. James C. Roche, Vice President for Analysis, Northrop Corporation. Stephen Rosen, Director of Research, APAC. Dennis Ross, Special Assistant to the President for Middle East Affairs, NSC. Robert Satloff, Fellow, The Washington Institute. Harvey Sickerman, Consultant to Secretary of the Navy, John Lehman. Roscoe Suddarth, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Near East Affairs. Howard Teicher, Senior Director for Political Military Affairs, NSC. Pat Tyler, Correspondent, The Washington Post. Philip Wilcox, Director, Israel and Arab-Israeli Affairs, NEA. Trustees of the Washington Institute. Barbie Weinberg, President. Mike Stein, Vice President. Charles Adler, Executive Committee. David Steiner, Executive Committee. Walter Stern, Executive Committee. Roz Gussman. Herb and Eleanor Katz. Shirley and Aaron Kotler. Sidney and June Morey. Robert Reisman. Louise Stein. Sylvia Steiner. Betsy Stern. Lawrence Weinberg.